Welcome back to pregame.tv. We're going to take a look at a season win total. We've been doing these all throughout the summer. When we're ready to fire on one, we bring it to you. And this one's going to be mine. We're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, yeah, obviously, that's got to be me looking at that one.
Obviously, yeah, I wonder which way he's going to go.
Right, you know,
unless it's 15, I would think he's probably going over the total. But that's just me guessing.
Well, you know, I've been called a homer, but I have gone against the Steelers as many times as I've gone with them. But I look at this Steeler team. We're looking at a season win total of 9. Now, I know there's a few books that have gone to 9.5, but there's still 9s out there. And this is a team that was 8-8 last year. They were 8-8, and they lost their star quarterback for 3 of those games. Still finished 8-8. In 6 of the 8 losses last year, Ken, they lost by 6 points or less. 4 of them were by a field goal. If they just split half of those close losses, this is a team that you would have been looking at 11-5 team and in the playoffs. I honestly think they were probably the best team that didn't make the playoffs last year.
Here's the thing with Pittsburgh, injury bug. I mean, when you have a guy like Troy Polamalu, who's your leader in the secondary, you've got to have him on the field. He's not only worth points playing his position, but by helping other guys be in the right position for plays as well.
He covers so much ground. And for the first time, and knock on wood, I don't want to give him the kiss of death, he's entered training camp. This is the healthiest he's been in the last few years. But we have seen that he has not been able to make it through an entire season without having an injury. And speaking of the injury bug, it bit him on Monday night game. The running back, Le'Veon Bell, that they have just been gushing over in camp, he's going to be out a good while.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, coming out of Michigan State, was going to be that workhorse, and they lost Mendenhall, who went over to Arizona. Again, we'll keep tabs on the situation. Still have Dwyer, who I think is a guy, if he can hold on to the football. And it's funny because I mean he's fumbled several times. He put one on the ground on Monday as well. But he's a guy that comes out of that running offense with Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech.
He did, and he was the Steelers' leading rusher last year, and he came in to this year, third on the depth chart now. He fell after being the leader. And going into that Monday night game, they had Isaac Redman and Bell as co-starters. So, Dwyer kind of fell down, and I think of 2 reasons. One were the fumbles last year. 2, he came into training camp a little bit larger than he was last year, and they weren't happy about that. He put on some weight. But I look at this Steeler team, and I know Monday night's performance against Washington, the offensive line did not look good. But I'm here to tell you the offensive line is going to be better this year, probably the best that it's been in several years if they stay healthy. These guys just need to play together for a period of time. The problem's been the last 3 years, the offensive line has been patchwork from like the 4th week on every season because they had linemen dropping left and right, guys playing out of position to cover the holes. But they've got some talent on this offensive line. If they stay healthy, this line will only get better as the season goes.
Let me ask you, though, on the receiving core, because you lose Mike Wallace. He's your guy that stretched the field. Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders, there's no doubt that these 2 guys are good, solid. But when you have Heath Miller and Matt Spatham, both guys banged up right now, you've got to have Heath Miller. I mean, he's your leading receiver. That's crazy. Your leading receiver from the tight end position, an aging veteran. But that guy, one of the best as far as finding an open seam, getting open, and, of course, he does not drop anything.
No, they got to get him back. And what's even more important with him, not only is he hands that he catches everything, and he gets those underneath routes and finds the holes in the defense, he is a great blocker. And if the Steelers are going to get back to the running game, which is what they're committed to, they want to get more balance this year, protect Ben more with the running game. And that's been the Steelers' bread and butter. And they've kind of got away from that the last couple of years. And, it's easy to do when you have a guy on the field like Wallace that can stretch the defense. They're not going to have that this year. But they are going to have Antonio Brown Brown becomes the #1 receiver now. I don't think his numbers are going to be as good as they have been, obviously, because what happened in the past is when Wallace would spread the defense going deep, he would be open for the underneath routes, and then he's a good receiver, runs good routes, and if that initial defender misses on him, he turns a small gain into a big gain. The only problem with the receivers last year, too, is they had fumbleitis as well. Big plays they'd make and then cough the ball up, late in, don't fight for those extra yards. Go down.
You know, that's something that Marvin Harrison taught Reggie Wayne. And if you ever watch when Manning was running the show, Harrison and Wayne, they'd get that ball and they'd go right to the turf because that blindside, backside pressure, a lot of times when you're a smaller guy, that's how you're trying to get that extra 3-4 yards. Not worth it. You've got Manning, you're going to come back. You got Roethlisberger, you're going to come back. Let me ask you, too, because I think defensively, inside the AFC South or AFC North, you've got 2 defensive players shifting but staying inside the division. Paul Kruger going from Baltimore to Cleveland and Harrison going from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati. Harrison, although he got nailed on a couple bogus fines that we all agree were he can't stop on a dime. I thought he got shafted a couple times by the league. But this guy, one of the hardest hitters and an emotional leader, a guy that really gets everybody up to his level. And when he's got him playing that way, I mean, that defense is so formidable. Now, they still have a lot of good guys. You've got Woodley, you've got Timmons, you've got so many Foot. All these guys are really, really good. How big a loss is James Harrison?
James Harrison is on the backside of his career. I mean, he's still a good player, obviously, and Cincinnati grabbed him right away. But this is a situation. They love this rookie that they drafted, and he could start before by the time we get to opening day. They'll be using him a lot. Great on a speed rush outside linebacker. What's going to be a problem is now Cincinnati, the 2 times they play the Steelers, it's going to be like having another coach in the the coaching room on defense because he knows all of the Steeler defensive schemes and so forth. Being there with Dick LeBeau so long,
and the old man will switch it up though for that Cincinnati game.
Absolutely, but it's still you always like to have one of those players that have been there the whole time. Is almost like a spy for you. So that's going to hurt a little bit. But I think the Steeler defense and what you saw Monday night, the Steeler defense played good. I mean, Roethlisberger doesn't have that bad pass that goes for the interception there that I could have ran in. And then late in the game they gave up one with the reserves. But you look from the first quarter till the fourth quarter, Washington really didn't generate any offense. And I realize Kirk Cousins went out early and, it was a situation that, changed the whole complexion of the game. But still, the first string defense played well. And I think this defense will play well this year. And if the Steelers do go to that commitment to the run, Ken, it's going to make the defense better because what was happening and I talked about this last year with the Baltimore Ravens, when you go to a hurry-up offense and you're passing the ball more, you're putting your defense on the field for more plays. The more plays a defense is on the field, the more chances it is to get exposed. And that's what happened to Baltimore in a lot of their games last year. The Steelers, if they run the ball, it's going to shift time of possession, and the Steelers will be on the field less. Defensively, it'll make that unit even better.
I expect them to bounce back this year. But again, to me, that AFC North is just a tough division to pick right now.
Well, Cleveland's improved, but they're not ready to make that next step yet. Cincinnati is everybody's darling to win the division. And you can't fault it. They've got a great defense. And you look at Cincinnati, that offense is growing every year. And I like the running back they drafted this year. But you look at them until they prove that they can do it in the big game. And they made the playoffs 2 years in a row, but they're also 0-2 in the playoffs.
Right.
And they struggled offensively both games that they played in the playoffs that they made the last 2 years. Now, granted, Andy Dalton, 2 years in the league, 2 for 2 for making the playoffs. That's a good sign. But remember how we talked about Matt Ryan, Matty Ice did everything, but he couldn't win a playoff game. Now he finally got that monkey off his back, and I think, Atlanta's ready to make that next step. We need to see Cincinnati make that next step before I can jump full force on them. And there's no question Baltimore has lost some this year with, all of the losses.
But they made a couple shrewd moves by grabbing Stokely and Dallas Clark this past week to shore up the receiving core. Once they lost Pitta, that was a big blow. Still got some speed guys with Jones and Torrey Smith, so that helps out, makes Baltimore a little bit more formidable on the offensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be a great race. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Marco, this is your free play, baby. Let me know about those Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, as I said at the beginning of this video, the Steelers are an 8-8 team last year, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. They had injuries to the offensive line. They lose Ben Roethlisberger for 3 games. The quarterbacking situation, they bring in Byron Leftwich. What happens? He gets hurt the first game he's in there. Then they got to go to Charlie Batch. I love Charlie Batch, but the time had come. Charlie Batch was too old. He went into that Cleveland game, and that had to be one of the most painful games as a Steeler fan to watch last year. When the Steelers went up and down the field, they turned the ball over. I think it was like 7 times in that game against Cleveland, and lost one of those close games last year. Then he got redemption, and it probably was one of the best moments in sports for me, things that I'll remember in Pittsburgh, when he got the win in Baltimore, and him and Ben Roethlisberger hugging on the sideline when they got that win, because he knew Ben was going to be back next week. He also knew that was probably the last time he would take a snap in the NFL, which, he has retired. This is a situation, they got a backup quarterback. They went out and got Gronkowski. Yeah, Bruce Gronkowski, and he's a former Pittsburgh guy, 30, former starter. Does that sound familiar to something they had for the last 10 years? That's what they did with Charlie Batch. And so they've got an insurance policy this year. If something does happen to Ben, they've got a plan B. And, Byron Leftwich was just not mobile at all, when he was in there. So this is a situation. They've upgraded the backup quarterback position. The offensive line, as I said, just needs a little bit of time to play together and gel. Love the running backs, but we have lost Bell. He's going to be out for a period of time with his foot injury, but we've got Dwyer and Isaac Redman to carry the load there. I like the Steeler team to turn this around. As I said, if they can turn half of those close losses around and consider all of the turnovers, and they played 3 of them without Ben Roethlisberger, they easily go from 8-8 to a 9-win team. 9 wins gets us a push. I actually see the Steelers as a 10-6 or 11-5 team. That gives me value to take the over here on the season win total. I'll take the Steelers over 9 as my preseason pick. Now stay tuned here on pregame.tv. We'll have more season win totals for the rest of the summer, both in college and pro football, and keep you set as we head right up to opening day in both college and NFL. Thanks for watching.